Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight we're joined by author, entrepreneur, founder, and president of Fit Body Boot Camp, and so much more, Bedros Keuilian. Bedros, for people that aren't familiar with you, first of all, they should be. There's so much to talk about with you. You are the epitome of a success story, if I have ever heard one. But tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and kind of how you ended up here, because I find your story incredibly fascinating.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Lara. The best way I always describe myself to people is I say I'm like the Cinderella man. I'm the American dream and the immigrant edge. And what I mean by that is in 1980, my dad decided that we were going to escape communist Soviet Union. Now, at the time, my dad was a member of the Communist Party. I was 6 years old. My brother was about to turn 20 years old and was about to join the Soviet Army and go to war in Afghanistan. Back then, the Soviet Army was fighting Afghanistan. And my dad, us being Armenian, he was like, the hell if my son's going to join this military of the Soviet Union and go to war for them when they're the invaders of our country. So long story short, my dad, being very wily, was able to creatively bribe our way out of the country into Italy. When we got into Italy, it was early June of 1980. We went to the American consul and we said, hey, we're political refugees. My dad said, I'm a member of the Communist Party. You can pump me for any information that you want. And we want to legally enter the United States. And until this day, my dad is 89 years old now. He says, anytime you're on a TV show, a podcast, you write a book, he goes, you always mention that we legally entered the United States. And I love that because, look, we spent 10 days there in Rome, Italy, living off scraps, but doing things right. And on June 16th, 1980, we flew into JFK. From there into Southern California, simply because my dad didn't want to live in the cold weather anymore. So, and the thing he told me, Lara, which I thought was really cool, is being the youngest one of the family at 6 years old, he said, look, as long as you learn the language, assimilate into the culture, and serve the people in this great country, the country will serve you. And maybe I was young or naive or whatever. My dad's my hero. So I said, absolutely. And that's exactly what I've done. And this country's been great to me. I've been able to start a great international franchise, a coaching and consulting business, written a best-selling book, and been able to help a lot of causes and charities that I believe in. And so I'm just very grateful.
Wow. Well, I mean, you really summarized your story quite well, but it's rather incredible. And I appreciate that your dad says you should talk about the fact that you immigrated here legally, because it is a huge point. Look, this country was founded on immigrants. That is, we all pretty much came from other countries. Ultimately, our ancestors did, but they did it legally. And the problem now is that obviously people are not doing that, and it's very unfair to the people who go through what your family went through. So many people that I know who are trying to become legal immigrants have to go through when you have all these other people that are just jumping the line and walking on over our border. But you came here, obviously you guys had to make it on your own here in America, your family, and then you became this incredibly successful entrepreneur. You just talked about, a life coach and all of this. So what was step one on that path? Was this something that you always knew you were going to do? Because from what I understand, you had a bit of a rough start. Once you got over here to America, you kind of got in a little bit of trouble. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it was a rough start. And look, when you're a foreigner in this country, especially in 1980, where there was a lot less political correctness, we lived in Section 8 housing in Santa Ana, which was very gang infested at the time. And so between the black gangs and the Mexican gangs that were fighting each other, the foreigner comes into town and now they start beating me up. And so I kind of grew up with a chip on my shoulder. And it wasn't my proudest moments, but throughout high school and up to my 19, 20, 21 years old, I did get involved in a police helicopter chase, in some carjackings, home invasion robberies, but I never did go inside the home. My friends did. I was just a getaway driver. Not that absolves me from anything. But, thankfully I had a mentor when I started getting into the fitness world, fitness changed my life. I was kind of a chunky kid so imagine being fat, out of shape, a foreigner, and you're being yelled at and told to go back to your own country. They're making fun of you for being broke and living in Section 8 housing. One time, my mom had my dad siphon out gasoline from a parked car in the apartment complex we lived in to wash my hair with gasoline because I had lice and we couldn't afford lice treatment. And so kids laugh at you, right? And so whatever, all that happened. It was still a great price to pay to come into this awesome country, but I did have a chip on my shoulder, and I did get into a lot of trouble. But as I got into my early 20s and started working in a gym as a personal trainer, one of my personal training clients, his name is Jim Franco, he kind of started to mentor me and coach me. And one of the funniest questions I asked him was, I said, Jim, I notice every day you drive here with a different car. Like, how do you do that? He goes, you're allowed to have more than one car, kid. And that was baffling to me, that you can make so much money to be able to have multiple cars and leave work at 2 o'clock like he did. So I had a great example of a financially wealthy man who instilled confidence in me when I didn't have the confidence to be an entrepreneur. And really, that mentor, Jim Franco, was my springboard into entrepreneurial success.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you could start where you did, and I mean, essentially, not to use a cliche, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make such a success out of yourself, to go from washing your hair with gasoline to, being the success that you are today. I mean, Bedros, anyone in America could do it. That is why this country is so special. That's why so many people want to come to America, because there really is no other place on earth that offers you the opportunity to rise to any level that you want, if you're willing to put in the work and really willing to do it the right way. So I think that your story, is obviously, you're so inspirational to so many people, which is the reason you're a life coach, a motivational speaker. But you also have a book called Man Up, and you call it the guide to stop making excuses, take control of the situation, and rise to your fullest potential in business and every other aspect of life. Why did you want to write this book? And I mean, I guess it's just a guide to kind of say, hey, get up, get it together and do what you want to do.
Sure. Well, I'm 47 now. So 9 years ago, when I was 38 years old, a few years before that, I was starting my fitness franchise. And, it's when you're working for yourself, self-employed, you can lead yourself. When you have a handful of employees, you could probably lead them well as well. But once you have a big team and you're dealing with lawyers and 20, 30 employees, quite honestly, I wasn't the best leader. Leadership is not factory installed for me. I am a good entrepreneur, but a horrible leader. And I found that I was not having the conversations that I should with some employees. I had a business partner that I was having confrontations with, and I was being passive aggressive towards him and vice versa. And I started resenting coming to our office. And that led to, at the age of 38, me having this massive panic attack, and what I thought was a heart attack. In fact, the first chapter of the book is, the morning of my heart attack, because I'd never had a panic attack before. And I was like, holy crap, I'm having a heart attack at the age of 38. And who's going to walk Chloe down the aisle when she gets older? Who's going to protect Diana? Because I made a vow to my wife that I'd protect her. And who's going to teach my son Andrew to be a modern day knight? That's the only thing that flashed through my mind in that moment. Thankfully, the panic attack, as it subsided, went away. I thought I dodged a heart attack, and off to work I went. And that night I told my wife about it, and we went to the doctor the next day, and clean bill of health, just, hey, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed. I'm like, duh, it's bleeding into my work, it's bleeding into my relationship. I can't sleep at night. So I started working with a therapist, and I worked with a therapist to be able to take better control of my stress, my anxiety. Little did I know that was going to lead to 4 weeks of therapy, was going to lead to 16 months of therapy, where I worked on real deep-seated traumas that happened to me. I was molested as a kid in Armenia by 2 older boys. And what my mom and dad still don't know till this day is when we escaped and came here to the United States, they freed me from that, not just from communism and oppression, but they freed me from that. I, of course, as most men, just sucked it up, suffered in silence. And I realized now I can connect the dots. A lot of my anger and rage as a young man had to do with that suppressed trauma. So as I worked through it, I began to be able to have better conversations and better give feedback without feeling like I was going to hurt someone's feeling. And I would always tell myself, hey, man up and have this conversation, Bedros. Man up and do the right thing, and man up and make that decision, because I was indecisive. And so the title of the book is really about manning up and humaning up to your higher potential of yourself. And so when I wrote it, it's literally when I got on the other side of becoming a better leader, better entrepreneur, better father, better husband, I wanted to give people kind of a playbook of 6 things that I did, 6 pillars that worked for me, and that'll work for anyone who's trying to balance business and life and stress and marriage and all this stuff, all amidst trying to make it and get to the American dream. I mean, what's the point if you're going to be having anxiety attacks and can't sleep at night, and you're taking NyQuil to fall asleep and Adderall to stay awake like I was? It was just unfortunate, but it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Well, so it's so interesting to hear, you know, I feel like people don't talk about things like panic attacks enough. I find it so fascinating that the mind, I mean, our mind controls everything. And I think whenever the mind gets overwhelmed, you know, that's the result. And it can manifest itself in such a way that you thought you were having a heart attack. And nobody really talks about those things. And I know so many people who have suffered from panic attacks, and they legitimately thought that they were having, they were going to die, that there was something truly, truly wrong with them. But I think it's the body's way of saying, we need to do some work here on the mind and get that straightened out. So, I mean, I'm so glad that you ended up taking the path that you did. But I want to go back for a second to talk about fitness, because you said that that really was sort of your way out in a sense of, you know, a rougher youth and, you know, kind of all the things that you went through when you first moved to the United States. I am a bit of a fitness fanatic myself, Bedros, and I'm really intrigued by your focus on physical fitness. So obviously you were the personal trainer, you found your mentor that way, but then you started Fit Body Boot Camp. So tell me a little bit about that, because I think this is your success with that is really, that was your first major success. Is that right?
It was. Yeah, it was. And so to me, fitness is a gateway drug. Like, if someone wants to know how to change the world, everyone wants to change the world, change politics, change the president, change the economy. Before you start any of that change, like, start here. You can't control anything out there unless you can work here.
That's so true.
Right. I can change what I put in my mouth. I could change what time I wake up and work out. I can change the effort and the attitude that I have or that I put out. And so when I did that, I found that fitness was a gateway drug, and it built so much confidence in me that I can keep my word to myself. I can be consistent. And I go, where else can I do this? Maybe I could do this by opening up one little gym that my mentor encouraged me to do. Well, that one gym kind of scaled over time to over 600 locations pre-COVID, and an international franchise. And we run these, 3,000 square foot storefronts where we do functional training and focus on fat loss and body toning in 30-minute workouts, where people can come in 4 to 5 days a week and really get the results without having to worry about going to a gym and being intimidated or having to get under a squat rack, because everything is functional based, and you have one trainer and a group of clients going through the program. And so it was my brainchild after the economy crashed in 2008. One-on-one personal training was dying off, as you could imagine, in 2009, 10, 11, because one-on-one personal training was so expensive at the time. And so I said, well, what if we can do one-on-many and go from charging $600 or $700 a month for one-on-one personal training to maybe $150 a month for a client to work out in a group? And what if we can take that outdoor boot camp that works well in California and Florida, but doesn't work so well in most other states because of the weather and et cetera, and bring it indoors? And so in 2012, I franchised Fit Body Boot Camp. And by 2013 is when I had that anxiety attack. And by 2015, as I started to do a lot of the self-work and healing, we hit the Inc. 5000 list the next 3 years in a row, and Entrepreneur Magazine's top 150 franchises. It was so neat to connect the dots of as the founder, as the leader heals, evolves, and develops self-mastery, it bleeds into your business, it bleeds into your leadership, and my business just hockey sticked. And listen, 2020 served as a great acid test of my leadership, because other than gyms and restaurants had it the worst. I don't care what anybody says.
It's so true.
Right. And the fact that we lost over 200 locations in 2020, and here we are recollecting those locations back now in 2021, and we're going to go above and beyond that next year, is a testament to our brand, to our franchisees, to the programming that we run, and the results that we deliver to our clients.
So I saw a podcast that you did, and I'm not exactly sure the date that you recorded it, but it was, I'm going to say, I think it was in March of 2020, like the very beginning. Yes, because you referenced that it was going to be like 15 days to slow the spread or something, which, jokes on all of us.
Why was I wrong?
Oh, were we all wrong, Bedros? I mean, come on. But you were talking about how, and I loved that your mind immediately went to this place. You basically said, we don't know what this is going to be. You know, things are shutting down, and obviously a big part of that will be gyms. But we need to get our ducks in a row, and we need to plan for what might come. And you were like right out front. I don't think a lot of people had the foresight like you did, but I loved that you were kind of right there out front, and you must have helped the franchises all over the country, you know, with that really inspirational message, and probably people you'll never meet who said, you know what, this guy's right. I probably need to plan in case this thing kind of goes longer than we think. But do you feel like, obviously there wasn't much that you could do about a lot of it, but did you make concessions for COVID, and what happened with all the gyms for you? Yeah. I guess it was maybe different in different states.
Well, believe it or not, so I my wife sometimes thinks this is really bad, but I think it's a gift. Coming from a communist country where you just can't trust the government, I was like, all right, we know that they say 15 days to flatten the curve, but just in case it's more than 15 days, let's pivot to online coaching, online training, create Facebook private groups, and that private group will be your online gym, and we'll use Zoom to deliver in-person workouts to people's homes. And I tell you, in 74 hours from March 16th, I told all of our franchisees that we have a social obligation and duty to shut down our locations for 15 days.
Yeah.
74 hours later, we launched the online coaching platforms. I said, on the off chance that this goes longer than 2 weeks, we're going to keep charging your franchise fees. You're going to keep charging your clients their money, and you're going to keep getting them in shape, because we know fitness and working out builds the immune system and keeps people in a positive mental attitude. And we're going to need that if we're on lockdown longer. And sure enough, we were. And as it turns out, you are right. Many, not only fitness franchises, but many businesses who heard that podcast, and that podcast got me on Fox News, where I got to then really amplify that message. Many people reached out to us and said, hey, had I not heard that podcast and put myself in that same frame of mind that you were in, we would have had a different outcome with our business. Now, as the longevity of the lockdown continued, we lost most of our locations in states like Michigan, California, New York, New Jersey, all the obvious states, as you can imagine. But at some point I said, look, guys, as the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, I'm here to tell you that by law, you're supposed to stay shut down. But for me and my own personal locations here in California, I might be putting up butcher paper on the window and still training my clients in a safe and sanitized environment. And so it was one of those things where, wink, wink, we have to start bucking the system.
Yeah.
And doing the things that made America great. And so we did, and we were able to survive and now thrive again.
Wow. I mean, well, thank goodness. And thank goodness that message was amplified and people got to hear it. And you did such a great service, I think, to so many people by saying that. But it is interesting when we all kind of take a step back and look in retrospect now, and we say, wait a minute, we were shutting down, to your point, gyms. We know that when people are in better shape and their fitness is very good, then their immune system works better. And when you have a pandemic situation on your hands, wouldn't we want people to be healthier and be in shape and have immune systems that function at the highest possible level? But it obviously was so devastating that so many gyms shut down. Interesting thing, I feel like so many people talk, Bedros, about this like COVID-20 or whatever they put on. I was like, you know what? This is a great opportunity for me. No, there's no office to go into. I'm just going to go out on a run and go for a run for as long as I want. I got in great shape during COVID. I know that's not the case for everybody, but honestly, it's so sad to me to kind of look back and see how many people probably were, getting their fitness goals met, and then everything shut down. And a lot of them still haven't gotten back up and gotten back to it. And gosh, isn't that so sad that something that could have helped so many people in so many ways, it's just,
yeah,
I hate to see it.
That is sad. And by the way, credit to you and others like you. And I was one of those people that said, hey, this is my chance at the time I was 46 to get in better shape. And I did. However, those are the few of us who are
yeah, I know we're the crazies, Bedros. If we really want to be honest, like I could get a good workout in a closet, just like I don't need anything. I'll figure it out. But I'm a minority in that respect. I understand.
Exactly. So sadly, the rest of humanity needs that support. They need the accountability. They need to go to the gym. They need to see their tribe. And when they don't, they just start emotional eating, binge eating. And the more confused and chaotic the environment, and the more
you want to comfort yourself.
Yes, exactly. And so it was the perfect storm to make people sick, fat, and dependent on the government.
Gosh, and you know what? I look around now, and I'm sure you appreciate this. There was a moment at the beginning of COVID. I remember I stood in line at the grocery store, probably for 40 minutes outside, spaced 6 feet apart. And this was in March in New York, and it was freezing cold still. Then I get into the grocery store. They only let a certain number of people in at a time. Of course, we're all masked up and the whole thing. And then you were limited on the amount of products you could buy. The shelves in so many aisles totally bare. And in my mind, I was like, this must be what it's like to live in a communist country. Obviously, having come from a country like that, did you get like sort of traumatic flashbacks at certain points? Is that right? Is that accurate?
You nailed it. That's why I did that. And in fact, I remember, so it's rare that I go grocery shopping these days. It's just my life's too busy and hectic. But when I heard my wife say that, hey, at the Albertsons, the grocery store, there's shelves that are empty. And oh my gosh, I literally drove there after leaving the office, and I looked and I was just laughing hysterically, because I came home and I said, hey, family, load up in the car. We're going back to the grocery store. My son, Andrew, and my daughter, Chloe, had never seen empty grocery stores.
Of course.
I grew up between, up to the age of 6. I grew up in that. We would wait in line for hours for bread and butter, only for it to not be available when you got to the front of the line because they ran out.
You're too late,
And so I wanted them to see that. And, as twisted as it might sound, this has become this new young generation's World War II, 9/11. Every generation needs a Great Depression type thing to band together. And I do believe, and maybe it's the forever optimist in me, that, this younger generation, when I say younger, I mean under 18 years old, what the oppression they're about to see, because the worst is yet to come.
Oh, I agree with that. By the way, the shelves are starting to become bare again. My dad went to Home Depot the other day to get some tool, and he was like, usually there are 20 of them. There were 2 options available. I've never seen that before.
There you go. So as the worst is yet to come, I do believe that this will be the Great Depression or the 9/11, whatever the thing is, that's going to band this generation together and create hard times so that they can become a hard generation, because they have gotten very soft.
Oh my gosh, have that. I mean, geez, you think back to what 18-year-olds were doing in World War II versus the 18-year-olds of today. And you can't even compare the two. How old were your kids when you took them to Albertsons?
So let's see, Chloe 13, Andrew 15, because they're now 14.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, that they'll probably never forget that for the rest of their lives. And you're right, probably there's so much more of this to come. Sadly, we've got container ships they can't empty because we don't have enough workers, and all we know what's going on out there in the country. But that probably will be a moment that they share with their kids and grandkids one day, because you took them there to see that. And I hope it was a warning to every American out there that, this country is not guaranteed. The freedoms we have and the incredible country that we've always been is not guaranteed. We have to fight to keep it that way. And gosh, it's a really scary time right now. To anyone I know who came from a country, Bedros, like you did. So I hope people out there are seeing the light and really seeing things for what they are. I want to ask you though, kind of in the same vein, like you're talking about you doing something to kind of teach your kids and connect with your kids. You have a program called Squire that puts fathers and sons together kind of side by side. You test them physically, mentally, and really kind of get them together to craft the best possible versions of their future selves. And I think that a father-son relationship is so important, and I don't think people focus on it enough. I have a son, and you know, I know the time that my husband spends with him is going to be incredibly impactful in his future. Why was this program something that you wanted to do, though?
Well, that's a great question. And so for thousands of years, every culture, every generation, every tribe has had a ritualistic process where the son is torn away from the mom and is put through a rite of passage to then win a seat at the table with the men, so that the men will groom him into a capable, confident man who will protect, who will provide, and who will be prepared in times like this. And I don't know, the media, the government, whoever you want to say, has done a wonderful job over the last 30 to 50 years in declining and defanging men. In fact, they've even coined the term toxic masculinity.
Oh my gosh.
The reality is that word should not exist, because a man is either toxic or he's masculine. If he's masculine, it's because he opens doors, he's chivalrous, he knows how to protect himself and his family, but he will always give the rite of passage to a stranger and be a savage servant. If he is toxic, then he's passive aggressive, and he feels this gnawing of masculinity within, but he suppresses it and therefore shows up in this very explosive, toxic, passive aggressive way. So you're either toxic or you're masculine. There is no toxic masculinity, but they've done a great job coining that term. So
they love phrases. They love coining these ridiculous phrases, Bedros. I mean, you're so spot on with this.
How about domestic terrorism? How about that?
Oh.
How about the soccer mom now that goes to a PTA meeting is a domestic terrorist if they raise their voice? But all that aside, we found that ritualistic process of helping young boys become men somehow evaporated out of society. Remember, women, young girls, have a very physical thing that happens. You have a menstrual cycle, your breasts begin to develop, like my daughter, and you have mom talks to you and says, hey, you are now a woman. There's nothing physical that happens to a young boy.
That's interesting. I never thought of it like that. Yeah.
Right. And so this is why knights had squires, and it was the job of the knight to teach the ways of a protector to the squire. And the squire's job was to tend to his horse, to his armor, etc. And so since that went away, we decided to create the Squire program to bring dads and sons together, and sons typically around the age of 13 to 15 years old is who we want. And we create this 15-hour experience where the dads lead the boys, but us 5 instructors, and one of the instructors is a Navy SEAL, the other one is a former Marine, and we have a former SWAT guy, an MMA fighter, and me. And we kind of lead them through this really awesome experience that culminates in the 15th hour through I guess this experience where the young boys are blindfolded and they're made to walk through bear traps and razor wire and broken glass. But the father is coaching them.
Oh, wow.
And son, take 2 steps forward, 1 step to the right. And the idea is there in life, you're going to hear a lot of noise. There's always one true voice within that will guide you in the right direction. Right now, it's the voice of your father. As you get older, it's the voice within of self-mastery. And so there's a lot of ritualistic reason for that. And so we've created that, and it's been, those sell out, every single one sell out, and we don't do it for profit. In fact, we donate a lot of if there is any profit from the classes, we donate it to Shriners Children's Hospital. But it's just a meaningful thing we want to do to help really grow the next generation of young men.
Wow, and it's so important. Gosh, I hope you're still doing this, 11 years from now when my son is around that age. That is such a great thing to do. And I'm sure the impact on these young men is just incredible. We're running out of time. I could talk to you all day, Bedros. You have to come back because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. But I would love for you, with everything that you do, your focus on being the best at what you do, what is one piece of advice that you could tell our audience that could push them to make an immediate difference in their life, whatever they're doing? What's something you like to tell people?
You know, there's just one very simple piece of advice that I could tell people, and I think psychologically we've now studied this, and it's a fact that if you start your day with a win, you're more likely to win the rest of the day. If you start your day with a loss, you're more likely to lose the rest of the day. And those days add up to weeks, the weeks add up to months, months end up years. And so the simplest thing I tell people is just don't hit the snooze button. Don't hit the snooze button first thing in the morning, because that little win, you made a promise to yourself the night before saying that you're going to wake up at a certain time. Keep your word to yourself. Develop credibility with yourself by not hitting the snooze button. Wake up with a W, and you'll find that you start stacking more W's. The dominoes begin to fall. And that's the one simplest advice I like to give.
Wow, that's such a good idea. By the way, I'm so guilty of the snooze button, and tomorrow, Bedros, I'm gonna do that.
Good.
And I'm gonna see how it goes. I'm gonna let you know. But that's so interesting. It's all about kind of getting yourself in the right frame of mind. I mean, it's a great idea. So thank you for that. Look, you're such an inspiration, and I was so excited about this interview. That Bedros, I'm doing this interview with you on my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, because I just think you're such a breath of fresh air. Your story is incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, the difference that you make in people's lives every day is, you can't even calculate it, I'm sure. So I know you'll keep doing it, and please keep us updated on anything new. We just really appreciate all that you do, who you are, and the difference that you're making out there in the world. So Bedros Keuilian, thank you so much for being here with us today on The Right View. And to everybody at home, as always, thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next time.